So let's make a blooper. I'm going to go ahead and hit record. So this is where you basically say, hi, this is Udo from theudo.com, and you're listening to Jeff Smith on Vroom, Vroom, Veer. And
I have to say that?
Yeah, you have to say all that. Yes.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready, hit it.
Okay. Hi, I'm Udo from Udo's Choice and theudo.com. And you're on Vroom Vroom.
Veer. Vroom, Vroom, Veer.
Vroom, Vroom, Veer. You're on Vroom, Vroom, Veer. Okay, so that should be blooper enough.
That's bloopery. That's perfectly bloopery. Yes. See, when you're trying to intentionally make a blooper, you can't really screw it up. The only way to screw it up is to not screw up.
I don't have to try. It comes so naturally to me.
Me too.
I have a special talent.
Yeah, me too.
This is my superpower.
Yes, screwing up and making it funny. All right, I'm going to hit stop. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Zander Sprague, thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer, and welcome to the show. How's it going, man?
It's going well. Thanks for having me in, Jeff.
Hey, no problem. I appreciate you being here. Okay, so you are Zander Sprague, and you're at Zander Sprague, and that's Sprague, SPRAGUE.com. So talk a little bit about what you're most excited about your business today.
I am most excited, Jeff, because I've got a book coming out on February 9th. It's called
Awesome.
Epic Begins with One Step Forward: How to Plan, Achieve, and Enjoy the Journey. And it is if I could be braggy for a moment, Jeff.
Please.
It's a really great book. It's a book to help people go out and really grab those epic dreams that you have. And I believe that all of us have epic things that we want to do. Now, that could be anything from going back to school to traveling to that dream country that you've always wanted to go to. Or perhaps it's something a little more at home that you want to change your career. You want to change the way you eat, or you want to exercise more, or like I did many years ago, decide to run a marathon.
Yeah, whatever epic means to you.
Absolutely.
That sounds like fun. I think I need something like that because I'm getting ready to quit my job again. And my wife and I have vague plans to travel, air quotes, right? But
I get it.
Yeah. So, I'm pretty sure I'm going to keep podcasting for sure, right? But I think I'm going to need stuff to do, right? I'm just traveling and screwing around. I tried that already. It's kind of boring.
Well, I think, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I think if we kind of have some purpose,
yeah,
it's much easier. If we have a destination, then
right.
it's so much better. And meanwhile, enjoy the journey while you're getting there. And as you get close, perhaps you decide, once I get there, here's where I want to go next.
Yeah. It's, enjoy the ride. I like that. Enjoy the journey, enjoy the ride. It's a good life lesson because, we all know where we're going. There's an end. There's no rush to get there. Okay.
Absolutely not.
Right. Okay. So this is Vroom Vroom Veer. So that means we have to take a trip through memory lane. So where did you grow up? Talk a little bit about what childhood was like for Zander Sprague.
Well, childhood was, I'm going to say I had a good childhood. I grew up in a small town in Massachusetts called Sherburne, which is 18 miles southwest of Boston, very bucolic. I grew up on a tree farm.
Tree farm. Okay, that's fun.
And so we had 18 acres of land.
Wow, that's a lot of land.
My parents built the house in 1968. It was all electric. By the mid 70s, that was not your best choice.
Okay.
So,
right.
So
okay.
we ended up putting in a wood burning stove, and we had all this
free fuel.
Yeah.
Right.
And my parents had free labor to stack that wood and then bring it, every other week.
Stack it up like cordwood.
Yeah, I did. I'm telling you.
Me too.
I had spring break. I always had the pleasure of duping one of my friends into helping me stack 7 cords of wood.
Lovely.
Yeah, that was always fun. They only wanted to do that once, even though they got paid.
My dad and brother and I did that. My dad went through this phase. I guess it was like around when I hit 6th grade ish. He put a wood burning stove in the living room. And so every year he bought like a cord or 2 of wood that was pre-split. So then we had to stack it up in the backyard. Yay.
Yeah.
I actually miss it. I actually miss it now because they sold that house and they took out the fireplace, but I miss that wood burn smell, that smoke smell.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, it was kind of cool. When I was growing up, my dad was a state legislator in Massachusetts.
Wow. Okay.
So from a young age, I was out helping him campaign. I remember in 1977, I was standing Saturday morning, standing in a town dump.
Okay.
Asking people to vote for my dad, and it's windy and blustery, and it smells like a dump.
Yeah.
And people are coming to drop
a smell
off
everyone
refuse,
knows.
and I'm like, hey, when you get done emptying that, can I hand you a thing? And would you vote for my dad?
Wow. That's great. That's a good story. I'm remembering that smell. It's different than I had a job as a kid at a grocery store. And the worst smell I think I ever smelled was the what do they call those? Yeah, I guess it's a dumpster.
Yeah.
Behind the produce department.
Yes.
That is a whole lot of fermentation going on in there.
Yes. There's a certain piquant to that although you never want to smell it again, you will always remember that
it was like sweet, sickly garbage. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So what were you like in high school? What was high school like for you?
High school was, I think I was somewhat that awkward teenager, but I was a preppy to the T. I still like being a preppy. It's good. I think it's a good look. So, I am trying to evolve my look.
Did you have like the turned up collar?
I did have the turned up collar.
Great. That's a good look.
I had the, I hate to say it, but I was seen in public with the, with the sweater like over my shoulder.
Oh, wow. So you were asking
all those 80s films where they're making fun of the preppies. I'm like, oh, they're dressed well.
Yes. Yeah. So Zander was hanging out with Muffy and you were going to the club.
Absolutely.
Okay, got it. Good picture.
And I actually to this day have a friend whose name is Muffy, so it is hilarious.
But you don't sound like Thurston Howell III, so that's good. Where's my yacht?
I was fortunate. I went to boarding school, so I learned a lot about time management and like how to study, which I think has served me really well throughout my whole life.
Okay.
How to create structure to get stuff done, and later on I'll tell you how that all came into play in a later part of my life and career. So
right. Well, I think kids that go to boarding school, it's got to be kind of scary to begin with, right? You feeling like, oh my goodness, I'm going away from home. And how old were you?
Well, I went off when I was 13. I was a freshman.
All right, that's not too bad.
Actually started at one school, Avon Old Farms, down in Avon, Connecticut, and that really wasn't a great fit for me. So I then transferred up to a school called Dublin School in Dublin, New Hampshire, which is the highest elevated town in all of New England, home to Mount Monadnock, the most climbed mountain in the world. It used to be second most to Mount Fuji, but they put a road on Mount Fuji, so it doesn't count. So Mount Monadnock is the most climbed mountain in the world. Also, the home to Yankee Magazine and the Old Farmer's Almanac, which you may have heard of.
I've heard of that
at some point.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So there we go. I've just typed
your claim to fame. Dublin, New Hampshire. But that, I was going to say, that's not too bad. I think I could handle going off and leaving home when I was 13, 14, somewhere that age. But if I were like really young, it would be probably pretty scary.
Yeah,
but
definitely. And look, it was really hard when I first went off. It was hard. I was prepared, but then it is kind of scary.
It's just
and
lonely.
I have to say that at Avon, it was a all boys school. So
I'm
it
sorry.
was really kind of like Lord of the Flies. No, I chose it. It was like a little Lord of the Fliesy at time, and a very kind of Joe Jock school. And although I have been an athlete my whole life, I'm certainly not the top athlete. So there were challenges there, but nothing too bad.
Okay, gotcha. Still, I think it probably is a good thing in the end, because we all have to do that eventually. So imagine me, I'm like 18, and the first time I left home, I went to basic training for the Air Force.
Yeah.
I was shell-shocked.
I'm sure.
I think I'm still recovering, to be honest with you. So you got shell-shocked in a much lighter kind of environment, I think.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. So, all right. So you finish your boarding school and you're off to college. Where did you go to school for college?
I went to Pitzer College in Claremont, California.
Wow.
I was most definitely, like, my criteria was it needed to be bordered by the Atlantic, Pacific, or Gulf of Mexico. I wanted to be close to water, and it couldn't snow. I was tired of snow.
I'm with you. I can share that sentiment.
I'm going to jump back to boarding school for 1 second.
Sure, go for it.
I really can make this claim, which is Dublin being the highest elevated town, it snowed a lot.
Yeah.
And my senior year, I was in a dorm where I was just on the edge of campus, and I did have to walk uphill to school through 6 feet of snow.
Wow. Okay.
So, like the joke we make about our grandparents going, well, I had to walk uphill. I actually had to do that.
Yeah. So good for you. I mean, that's probably, as old people say, is character building. But yeah, I'm with you. I grew up in snow in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So there's we didn't have elevation, thank God. But yeah, I mean, I walked everywhere in the snow. Snow, not fun. And, I was the youngest of 3 siblings. So you add snow there, and there's, face washes and
getting pushed into snowbanks.
You get pushed into snowbanks. They put like snow in your pants, the frozen wedgie, all of those really fun things that you get with snow. It makes childhood even more fun.
Absolutely. I actually had to shovel my way to get out of the dorm. And we'd open the door and you'd be like, there's a shovel inside to shovel your way out to walk uphill through 6 feet of snow.
Yeah. So when I joined the military, I was like you. I never want to deal with this ever again. And of course I did. I ended up living in Japan twice, and about the same around the 45th parallel. So about the same amount of snow. But it wasn't as bad because there was skiing. Okay. So you go off to school. Okay. And now you're in California. Okay. What did you study? And, I actually talked a little bit about just getting away from snow and sunshine.
Well, okay. So, it was awesome that it of course, being young and dumb,
Right.
I'm like, well, I'm in Southern California. It's going to be sunny and 75 all the time. Well, that's San Diego, not the LA area, where it does actually get cold. And that's in air quotes there, folks, because cold in LA means that it's like 50 degrees.
Right.
And you would think that those Californians, that it was below, like 50 below zero. They were
pretty much.
They're all bound up. I mean, come on, when it's 70 degrees, they've got the parkas on and pulling out the long underwear. And I'm like, really? It's still 70 degrees. But it was awesome. I discovered In-N-Out Burger, the best burger in the world. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Really? Okay.
And I studied psychology and history.
Okay.
And
nice.
I was actually really crafty. I knew I was going to major in psychology, really loved psychology. Kept taking all these interesting courses in history. By middle of my sophomore year, I'd already minored in history. And I'm like, well, why don't I major in it? And I actually was kind of strategic in this, Jeff, because I wanted to go do a semester abroad. And I always wanted to go to Australia.
Wow. Oh, fun.
But we didn't have a program that went to Australia. And I had to have a reason to justify applying to another exchange program to be able to go.
Okay.
Now, one of the requirements for a history major was you had to take at least one course in 3 different continents. Now, most people did Americas, Europe, and Asia.
Okay.
I made the argument and was successful. I said, well, my requirement for my major is to take a course in another continent. I want to take Australian history. Oh, darn, you don't offer it. You're going to have to let me go to Australia.
And it worked.
It worked. I got to go to Australia.
Awesome.
And for a semester, I studied, I did some psychology, but more interestingly, I did a course in settler history.
Okay.
And a course in Aboriginal history.
Oh, nice. Wow.
Really fascinating. It was great.
Right.
Learned so much, had so much fun, and got to, after I was there, I traveled around. I went to New Zealand and went bungee jumping.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
I've never been. So my wife has been to Australia. I don't think she went to New Zealand. My wife is like the person that always brags about she's been everywhere we go. She's been there before.
Right.
And I'm always jealous. So I haven't been to Australia yet. She's already been there. So when we get there, she'll be my tour guide.
Exactly. Look, Australia's beautiful. New Zealand is really as spectacular as the
movies.
See.
Right.
It really is.
Thank you, Peter Jackson, for showing us how beautiful New Zealand is.
Absolutely.
It's gorgeous. Yeah. I want to go. I want to go to both. I want to go everywhere. I know. I can't wait. Okay. So, all right. So what was your first job out of college? It sounded like you kind of had psychology in mind, but you ended up working in corporate for a while.
I did. Funny thing about the whole psychology is I majored in that and then didn't really do diddly squat with it for 22 years. But we'll get there.
Okay.
My first job out of college, I worked at the front desk of a big hotel in San Francisco.
Oh, wow. Okay. Front desk. All right. So you're just signing people in and giving them room keys?
I was, absolutely. And I was having to wear a polyester wool blend jacket. As a preppy, that was really hard. If we ever had a big earthquake, there was just one way out of the front desk and it was past the gas main. And I was afraid that if we had a big earthquake, I'd be going by, that would explode. I'd catch on fire. That polyester wool jacket would be seared on me. And then there would have had to been it's such a shameful death that my parents, it'd have to be a short circuit TV because they couldn't be in the same room because of the embarrassment of the polyester and stuff.
Right. I get it. You die twice. You die once in real world and then twice of shame for polyester.
Absolutely.
I get it. So I saw on your stuff that you worked briefly, or I don't even know if it was briefly, but you worked at Intel Corporation.
I did.
I had a buddy. Actually, I had two friends that worked for Intel. And this is the Intel that makes CPUs, like the computer chips.
Intel Inside.
Right. So when I watched my two buddies, Intel of all corporations or many corporations, it seemed very like the military to me, very hierarchical.
Very much so.
Okay.
And my time at Intel came kind of. I mean, I had other jobs. I lived in San Francisco. I moved back to Boston for 6 years.
Okay.
I worked at Fidelity Investments.
Oh, nice.
A really funny story about working at Fidelity. You might have seen I'm an enthusiastic person.
Yes.
And I have belief that I can do anything I set my mind to.
Okay.
So somehow I got hired to work on the Unix help desk on the fixed income trading floor. And in the interview, I had no idea what Unix was. So I was asked if I knew what Unix was. And my honest to God straight face answer was, is it two emasculated men from Rome? I thought it was the plural of eunuch. And I got hired.
That's great.
So here I am working on.
You made them laugh, right?
The help desk, and I don't even know. I had 6 months of Unix for Dummies and these other books.
Right.
I'd be pouring through. And for people who don't know what Unix is, it's a programming code. And it's very powerful, but it's all command line driven.
Yes, there's no
which means that you have to type out these really long, C://
yes,
TMP/, and you have to write everything out. It's super powerful, but I basically had to learn a whole programming language with like a fire hose to be able to do my job.
But you did it.
I somehow did it. And then I went on and was a quality assurance engineer. I was at one point a Java developer, which, oh my gosh,
wow,
such the wrong job for me. I worked incredibly hard to be mediocre.
Right.
And that's why I stopped doing it, because I was like, I want more out of my life than just being mediocre.
Yeah, well, I could say, like, I think... Oh, I have to scratch my brain cells here for a sec. Somewhere, I want to say either middle school or high school, I played around with basic programming.
Yep.
And we had fun with that. Me and my friends, my nerd friends, we made like a very, very text-based version of Facebook. We were like, we would like made a database of all the girls in our school, and then we all rated them.
Yeah.
Niceness, prettiness.
Exactly. Well, no, absolutely. And going through school, I did, I somehow, it was like, oh, well, I'll do Turbo Pascal, which was like you're kind of making drawings and stuff like that. So, but my brain doesn't work that way. I think in all of our careers, there are the jobs that, although we could do, are just our brains don't think the same way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think people who do computer science, do programming and stuff, their brain works different than mine.
Right.
I'm all about the relationship. I'm a very outgoing person, like on the Myers-Briggs. I'm so far on the extrovert that they don't even have a rating for me. And so when I would get into a problem, I'd go over to one of my colleagues and be like, hey, how was your weekend or whatever? And they're like, why are you talking to me?
I know exactly what you mean. I felt the same way. It was like, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I learned what programming it is. And, I was having fun when we were doing it with, Mountain Dew and Doritos and, 4 other guys, right?
Sure.
Right? That was fun. But just doing it like all alone in a basement when, and then leave me alone and don't talk to me, and I come and go like for a 12-hour shift and interact with absolutely no one, that would kill me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So,
Yes.
so you asked me about Intel. For 20 years, I was a technical instructor. I worked for various
that's
software
fun.
companies,
Right.
taught people how to use software because I understand I have the ability to quickly learn technology, and I'm good at teaching people technical things.
Right.
When I was much younger, I spent 6 years as a sailing instructor. And,
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so it was so
you're
funny
just a
when
good teacher, trainer. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of my natural aptitudes is I'm interested. I want to share knowledge and information. And I seem to have a knack for being able to explain stuff to people in ways that they can understand it.
Right. I gotcha. Yeah. That works.
So I did. I worked at Intel for 5 years. I worked doing helping to get Intel technology taught. I spent a lot of time actually working to help universities to change their computer science curriculum to be teaching parallel programming, because Intel, like every other and all the other major chip manufacturers, started coming out with multi-core machines.
Right.
Meaning multiple CPUs, brains that can be used.
Right.
But the problem was all of the programming that was being taught is serial programming. And to really make this simple for people to understand serial programming, imagine a little store, a bodega, a convenience store.
Mm-hmm.
It's got one checkout line to start off with.
Right.
So whether you have 1 item or 20 items, everyone's got to go through in the order in line.
Right.
Now,
that's serial.
That's serial. Now, when you have multi-core, now you have multiple checkout lines.
Right.
So you don't have, if I only have a gallon of milk, I can go through the express line.
Right.
And you, Jeff, with your 20 items, will go through another line.
Right.
Now, imagine you have those there's total of 4 cash registers.
Right.
But you only know how to put people through one line. So you have 3 cash registers that are not being used.
Right.
Because you don't have, that's basically, I was trying to help universities change their curriculum to teach parallel programming.
Right. Oh, that's nice.
The funny thing was, what I found was these professors who were so smart and so good, although in undergrad and graduate school they had learned parallel programming, they never had to do it. It's kind of like when I took geometry. Although I've taken geometry, I couldn't do geometry to save my life.
Right.
I don't apply it. You know what I mean? So It's like, yes, I took it, but it's not applicable to my life, so I don't really hold on to that knowledge.
Right. Totally.
These poor professors were having to go back, like, oh my God, I've been out of school 15 years now. I have to go try and figure out how to teach this. And parallel programming is not, it's a very, very complex. I don't want to make it sound so easy. It's
super complex, especially when you've been programming serial your whole life. It's almost like you have to start over. It's like you're working from scratch now because you can start doing so much more stuff.
Right. And it is absolutely one of those things that it's not just, oh, I now can execute. You have to, the complexity of writing the program gets so much harder because now you're like, okay, well, is there a dependency? Does A have a dependency on B?
Right.
If it doesn't, can I process B, but is that going to mess up E or D or whatever? How quickly can all of that? Now, it's interesting because there are companies that were really into utilizing all those cores. Financial services industries have billions of data points that they have to calculate every single night to be able to figure out what mutual funds are priced at, values are, what stocks, predictions, stuff like that. gaming companies all over
Right.
the multi-core, because now they're like, hey, we will write our rendering for you know, the waving of the palm trees, and we'll just write that whole thing and tell it to use core number 2, and then your movement will be here in the shading. And they got that.
Yeah.
But there were all these servers that were coming out with 6 cores, 8 cores, whatever.
Right. And forever.
And they're all running, they were all only using one. So it's kind of like having a 6-cylinder car, but only using that one cylinder. It's not running as efficiently as it could, and you're not getting the power.
Right. And then Intel as the company is very motivated to make sure that the hardware that they make is actually utilized, because for years it wasn't, right? So
absolutely.
Right.
And it was fascinating to work there. A very fast-paced environment. A lot of my time was spent trying to explain to my hires up that the change they were looking for, change in academics, is glacial.
Right. Yes.
And Intel was like, well, you've been at this for 6 months. Why haven't they changed it? That's not quite the way that this one's going to run.
Right. Right. It's definitely because you're not working on hardware. You're working on squishy brains.
Absolutely. And you know, at that point, like 40 plus years of entrenched learning.
Correct. Yes.
It doesn't.
So they all had to unlearn what they have learned.
They did.
I know. Okay. So let's move on. So at what point, I guess it's after those 20 years, then you decide to make a big Veer and start using that psychology degree, right?
I did. Yeah. No. So here's what happened. After getting laid off for the umpteenth time,
right? Okay.
From a
job.
You know, a startup company.
Gotcha.
It always killed me that as a technical instructor, I was the last hired, the first fired, and the least understood. Although one of the most valuable employees, because I was a zero-sum employee, Jeff.
Okay.
Think about this. I would teach multi-day courses, 4 days, and people were paying about $3,000 a person to come and take those courses. I'd have on average 10 people in a class. So that's $30,000 a class. I run that, you know, twice a month, whatever. You take all of my salary, benefits, everything. If we start in January, by about end of April, maybe middle of May, depending on how busy I've been at the beginning of the year,
I'd
already brought in all of like everything it costs to have me as an employee
has been covered.
Now the rest of it is, and that's why I said I'm a zero-sum employee. I'm actually covering what it costs to hire me, and then I'm making you money. I'm just a cash cow. But they didn't get that.
Right.
So after I got laid off and honestly like the fifth time.
Okay.
And, I kind of had one of those epiphany moments where I'm like, why am I learning other people's stuff when I have stuff of my own that I want to teach? And
okay.
And I went off and I love my mom. She's 81 years old. I've been her tech support for 30 plus years.
Right.
And the woman still can't put an attachment on an email, even though I've taught her. And I actually created a course to teach her the basics of how to use how to use software.
Okay.
Your basic computer, like how to use this, because I kept telling her to take a course.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, she's never going to do it unless I do it. So I made a course. I taught people 50 plus how to use their computers for a few years.
I like it.
And that was sort of in between. That was like just before Intel. I did that for a while, but then I went back to the corporate world because I had family and stuff and needed a firm thing. But I decided when I got laid off for the umpteenth time that I wanted to teach my own stuff.
Okay.
And stuff that I really wanted to do was go out and help sibling survivors. That's people who have lost a brother or sister.
Right.
And I wanted to try and raise awareness for siblings. And so I did that. And that was going, that was going well. But I kept having parents come up and say to me, hey, I lost a son or daughter, but I have other children and I never see them grieve. So, what's up with that?
Right.
And then, so I wrote a book about that. That's coming out in late 2022.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And I've been busy.
Yeah.
But I kept hearing from other sibling survivors that they had gone to therapy, but the therapist didn't understand the issues that as a sibling survivor that we're facing. And so they didn't find therapy helpful, but they needed therapy.
Right.
And so here comes that big Veer. And I was like, well, clearly I keep hearing this. So it's something that I need to do something about. But in order to do it, I actually need to be a licensed mental health professional.
Gotcha. Right. Okay.
So at 45, I went to graduate school.
Okay.
So that 22 years that I referenced earlier,
Right.
I hadn't used my I used my psychology, but I hadn't really focused in on it. Always thought when I got out of college, I'd do counseling. And here I am 22 years later in graduate school. I went through graduate school.
Okay.
Graduated. In California, you need 3,000 hours of intern experience before you're allowed to take the exam.
My goodness.
I finish my hours in February of 2020. I'm all excited. I'm going to go take the exam. And then March comes and we have a pandemic.
Right when you're about to launch.
All of the plans that I made, I can't get licensed. I can't go out and speak. I can't book any venues.
Right.
What the heck am I going to do here, Jeff?
Right.
Like
Yikes.
Everything that I planned, all of a sudden, there was a huge roadblock in front of me. And so as I was sitting in my apartment, which I didn't really like, and frankly was kind of eating my way through the pandemic.
Right.
I had this epiphany.
Okay.
That epic begins with one step forward.
Sure.
And I'm like, that is so true. I referenced, like, if you want to run a marathon, I've actually, I'm not actively running right now.
Right.
That much, but I have run 10 halves, 4 fulls, and a 50K ultra.
Oh my goodness.
One of those marathons I did, I was fortunate enough. My last marathon was the 2014 Boston Marathon.
Wow.
Now, let me be clear. I got in on a sponsor exemption. I did not qualify. I want to be clear. You see a picture of me. There's no way that I'm running like a qualifier.
Okay.
So, and in fact, one of my jokes is I completed the course. I have my Boston medal. I'm really, really excited about that. Very proud. Beyond a bucket, that was like holy grail moment for me when I crossed that finish line and they put that medal around my neck.
So you weren't going for time, you were going for finisher.
Finisher. I was going for
Right.
finisher. And in fact,
Gotcha.
I found out that I am not faster than an 85-year-old woman.
Nothing wrong with that. Hey, we're all where we're at, right? That's
Absolutely. Hey, finisher's a finisher. You know
finisher's
what I mean?
a finisher. They don't put a number on those. They just said, "Hey, you finished."
I mean, it's kind of like that old joke. What do you call the person who graduates last in their medical school class? Doctor.
Yes, correct. And they don't put your GPA on your diploma, so it's all good. So let's talk a little bit about, so you talked a little bit about you wrote and worked sibling grief. We don't have a whole lot of time left, but let's just talk a little bit about like what that was like for you going through. So how did your sister die? And
all right. It actually was 25 years ago yesterday.
Oh my goodness.
That my sister was murdered in her apartment in Chicago. She was a second-year law student at John Marshall Law School, and a maintenance worker who had spent 8 of the 10 prior years in Joliet State Prison. Had a 4-page rap sheet. to the best of what we could put together, let himself in to do a petty theft. It was exam period. My sister happened to be there. Most times she had left her apartment by 7 a.m. to go to law school, but she didn't have an exam that morning. They surprised each other. He strangled her, jumped out her 4th floor window to a 2nd floor roof where he broke his foot. The police had him. There was never a question of who did this.
Right.
10 days later, he hung himself in the Cook County prison, sparing my family what would have been a very public trial, because at the time, my father was a sitting district court judge in Massachusetts. So I'm sure you can imagine the media kind of was all over.
They were about to.
Judge's daughter gets killed by ex-convict. Kind of
oh my God.
Plays into what is salacious and stuff. And so
totally
it would have been a very public trial, which obviously been very challenging for my mom, my dad, myself, and my younger sister.
In a lot of ways, it would have been like so much worse. I mean, a lot. I mean, just the media in and of itself, you know, in the wrong way.
And then there's, because my father was a judge, I really had a front row seat to understand the vagaries and how the judicial system doesn't always work the way that we might wish and hope that it would work. It's not, and I'm not saying that the judicial system doesn't work, but it's
not perfect.
There are countless examples where we're surprised that someone, you're like, wow, there seemed to be a lot of evidence, and I'm not clear why that person, or there seems to be a lack of evidence, and I'm not sure how that person got a conviction. It seemed, you know,
we could have a whole podcast just on that.
We could, but I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole.
I know.
I'm trying to just like sort of.
I get it. You're right.
But anyway,
let's say you're fortunate that it played out as it did, because my next question was this a media event? And I think it would have been.
And it was at first.
Right.
I mean,
it would have been.
It was.
And
I mean,
your life would have been much different after that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So after that happened, I discovered that there was really a lack of resources for siblings.
Yeah, I bet. That makes
sense.
So
I wrote a book.
Because people think about like, you know, it's got to be horrific, obviously, for your mom and dad. But we just don't hear the stories from brother, sister.
Well,
we don't.
My experience, Jeff, was I was living in Boston. Lots of people knew my parents. I'd run into people who knew me and my parents, and they'd say, "Oh my gosh, how are your mom and dad doing?" Logical question, but no one asked how I was.
Right.
And here's some interesting facts. Our longest relationships in our life are with our siblings. It's not our parents. It's not our spouse. It's our siblings.
Makes sense.
Our siblings know us better than we know ourselves. And as my friend, Dr. Heidi Horsley says all the time, when you lose a sibling, you not only lose your past and your present, but you lose your future.
Right.
Because we all understand that we're going to die. Some of us are on our yachts on the River Denial, a little more about when that may happen, but that's okay. That's a totally different podcast.
Right.
But it reasonably, I think about my younger sister, and that it's sort of acceptable for us to be in the they may die zone when we're 75, 80, whatever. We kind of all logically understand that that's when that's going to happen. I was 28. My sister Lucy was 30. That wasn't
not on your radar.
No, it wasn't.
Right. And it's also, the crime element, the murder element, it's even different than a car accident. It's just so sudden. You don't so you're kind of behind in your processing, your grief process for say she had cancer, right? You start grieving when right? She has cancer. And then you have this other time in between before the death, right? but you didn't get that. Yeah.
You do. Now, it's interesting that you should say that, Jeff, because I actually, one of my best friends, his mom had breast cancer. Unfortunately, she lost that battle. But I was having a lunch with him, and we were talking about sort of the pros and cons of how Lucy died and his mom.
Right.
And I'd like to share this with my audiences because I think it's important. You're right. When someone has cancer, you have time. You start to grieve. You start to accept it.
You're planning.
It's hard because you are watching this person go down, and you know what's going to happen. You just don't know when, and there's a certain amount of stress. So the good is you can tell that person goodbye and that you love them and kind of resolve anything. But you have this long, slow goodbye.
Right.
Whereas what happened with me, a car accident, a murder, an overdose, something like that.
Right. It's traumatic.
You don't have that chance to say goodbye. You don't have, there's that side. That's the con side. But the good side is you don't watch them suffer. It's just sort of,
it's over already. Right.
It's over.
The Band-Aid has been ripped off of your heart. All at once.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying that either one is better or worse.
It's not like you get to pick. Right.
Yeah.
We're just like okay, things happened and they're different. That's all we're doing is like, okay. So one interesting question that always comes to mind for me is when you go through grief. I've never really gone through grief with a real personal loss. But I've looked at it, I've read some books and watched movies. There's a lot of surprising emotions that are in the grieving process. So what was the most surprising emotion for you while you were grieving?
It's
okay. Take your time.
No. I guess what it was is this realization that when someone dies, we tend to canonize them.
Understood.
Yep.
And suddenly they're like they did no wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
And I guess that surprising emotion was where I said, no, Lucy was a human. She was human. She had faults.
Yep.
And feeling guilty about sharing some of the bad stories or where she messed up or whatever.
Right.
But that I think is so important to remember this person in all, like with
full
all
fidelity.
Warts.
Yeah. Warts and all.
With all of that. I think we don't need to canonize them. No, we don't need to tear them down. But I think my family sharing stories about, the good and the bad makes a much fuller picture and memory for this person versus we only talk about the good things and we somehow conveniently forget.
I think that
at times
it's more healthy.
My older sister, she was really mean to me.
Sure. She was human. And you
Absolutely.
were siblings. It's like suddenly they get the glow of gone. They get the glow of gone. It's like, oh, they're talking.
Yeah, exactly. They're beatified and they're not. Right. So I think sort of that surprising thing was like that guilt I felt of going, well, wait a minute. I want to share this story because it's a funny story, but it doesn't paint her in the best light.
Understood. I can see where like mom and dad would probably have, that would be painful for them. I get it. But that doesn't mean that you want to just solely Pollyanna over the memory.
Right. So one of the things I want to share about not only my grief journey, but like my family's grief journey is we had a settlement with the building she lived in because it was they shouldn't have hired this guy and they didn't do the background check, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Okay.
But what we did is we started a charitable foundation in Lucy's name, and for the past 25 years have done sponsored all kinds of great nonprofits doing work in, that we think Lucy would like. One of the big things we've done is we give a grant to a graduating attorney who's going into public service
Wow.
to help
Nice.
pay down their student loan, to encourage them to go into public service, because in one of those life is really funny the way it works kind of thing, in early November of 1996, my parents and I were coming back from a trip overseas. And when we got to the US, my dad noticed in a USA Today that American Airlines was having a special that you could fly from Boston to Chicago round trip for like $80, as long as you left on Thanksgiving morning and flew back by the last flight on Friday. My parents, on a whim, decided to go have lunch with Lucy, which they did.
Oh, wow.
While they were at the lunch, my dad said, okay, your second year, what kind of law do you think you want to go into? And she's like, well, I'd like to either be a public defender or like a DA. But the problem is those don't pay a lot, and I have student loans. And my dad said, yeah, I get that. I see that all the time in my courtroom. That was 10 days before she was murdered. So
wow,
really kind of, interesting. So we've created this. We have like 25 Sprague scholars who've done incredible work, with our support. But my whole point there is not to in any way pump up my family, but to say our choice has been to celebrate the rainbow that was Lucy's life by doing good things. And I can tell you, Jeff, it feels so much better to help out worthy nonprofits in Lucy's name than to think about the dot that was the end of her life and that she isn't here and stuff like that.
Well said, the dot. Everybody has that dot. It was just a very traumatic dot, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Don't focus on the dot. That could be the
rainbow. Look, I mean, Lucy,
the rainbow is so much better. Yes. Celebrate the life. Better. Yes. Celebrate the life.
That's one of the things that I talk about in my book that's coming out is, celebrate the rainbow that was their life when you lose someone or not even just, someone dies, but if you get fired from your job or relationship ends, celebrate that thing was good. Don't forget that. Don't forget the good. On that God at the end.
Yeah. Don't get stuck on the negative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Positivity in the face of, grim truth is something that I've been fascinated by lately, especially with pandemic and stuff like that.
Sure.
I listened to a podcast with Tim Ferriss, and they got to this where they were talking about, I can't remember, I think it was an Admiral Stockwell. He was a prisoner of war in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And they talked about this little thing, right? So he was facing very grim truth as a POW, right? And the question to him was like, okay, how do you stay positive, And he was like, the optimists were the first to fall, right? The optimists were the guys that were saying, well, we'll be out of here by Christmas, right?
Yeah.
And they were clinging to that hope. And that was a false hope, right? It was like they had no clue when they were going to get out of there. So he was like, you have to face it and just say, okay, we have to face the reality is we could all die here.
Yeah.
And accept that. And then say, let's try not to every day. Yeah. Let's just
good plan.
Good, right? But let's also not say we'll be out of here by Christmas, because
absolutely
there's a part of you that knows that's bullshit.
Absolutely.
And then Christmas will show up and you may or may not be gone, right?
Absolutely. And then, I think when people are on these epic journeys, they, I was on a 7-year epic journey to get my degree and get licensed. Okay. That's a long journey.
Yeah.
There were ups and downs throughout that. Challenges when I was doing counseling, really tough cases and stuff where sadly there wasn't much
sometimes there's not a lot you can do. Right.
But one of the things that I talk about in my book, and it really applies here, so I'm not just injecting this, is what I call the 97-3 rule.
Okay.
Right? Now, I believe that 97% of our day is actually really good. And up to 3% is maybe not as good. Okay. But the question is, why are we constantly ignoring the 97
So true. Oh,
and
yes.
focusing on that 3% that doesn't go right?
Right.
And I came up with this when I was counseling high school students, and I was trying to help them like find the positivity, because they're focusing on this didn't happen. I'm like, yeah, but look at all this great stuff that happened that you're forgetting. So I asked them this question: you got a 97 on a math test, how would you feel? Oh my God, I'd be ecstatic. That would be great. I'm like, would you be complaining about the three points you didn't get? Oh no, gosh, no. I'd be so excited. I'm like, exactly.
Yeah.
So why are you stuck on that 3% of your day? It's the picnic analogy. So,
Okay.
Jeff, if you and I went, let's say we met, we're going to have I don't want to say picnic, a barbecue.
Okay.
Okay. 6 hours. It's sunny. It's beautiful. It rains for 2 minutes. That's it. Rest of the day, we have a fantastic time, good food, laughing, telling stories, all of that. And then someone says, hey, Jeff, how was the barbecue? Oh my God, it rained.
That's all you say.
It rained for 2 minutes. So somehow the 5 hours and 58 minutes that it didn't rain somehow just don't exist. You focus on them. And I'm like, why?
I know.
Why is that?
We
There's
do
so many good
have
things.
it seems like we've got a built-in bias for negativity. It seems like that is true, but it doesn't mean you have to live there.
No, you don't.
You're right.
But I'm gonna jump. So being from New England and actually being able to trace back to the Pilgrims, right?
Okay.
The Puritans. The Puritans have this really sort of messed up ethos that seems to permeate the rest of the U.S., which is that, especially in New England, that in order for your life to have meaning and for you to get to heaven, you basically have to suffer. You shouldn't really have any,
Wow.
there shouldn't be a lot of pleasure. Now, perfect
So
example
meaning
of that
is derived from suffering.
Somehow,
Yes.
in this sick way, right?
Right.
So, as a lifelong Red Sox fan, 1986, very painful, hard for me to talk about, but Bill Buckner, God, just pick up the ball and let's win the World Series. But anyway,
I'm sorry.
when the Red Sox lost the World Series, one strike away from winning the World Series, and we blew it, I think there was sort of this collective feeling in New England that, well, that's the way our life should be. We don't get what we want. So when they won in 2004, I was sitting on the couch, and my ex-wife came in and said, I was married at the time. She goes, I thought you'd be so excited. And I was like, I don't know what to do.
I don't know how to process this. The curse is over.
Right. Like I just got something that I had dreamed of my whole entire life.
Yeah.
And I'm
Lost.
something calamitous has to happen to counterbalance it. That is messed up, Jeff.
Right. It's so true,
I just
though.
got
Yes.
something I wanted. I'm so excited. And yet my first thought is something
horrible is going to offset this, because things,
Right.
there's
And
like
so
this universal epic scale, right? Of
Exactly.
good and bad, right? So if the Sox win the series, there's got to be an earthquake tomorrow.
Exactly. And then
I get it.
And then I think that here in the United States, I sort of look at it and say, not as much as in New England, but there is sort of that's that looking at the 3%. It's that there has to be suffering.
Right.
And I'm like, but no, I mean, I rally against that every day. And it's literally in my DNA. And I'm like, no, I will not succumb to that. I have to, I absolutely, all of us, joy and happiness and greatness, epicness in our life is we deserve that. And we should pursue that with all we have.
I have to, as we wrap up, and then we'll talk about how to get in touch with Zander Sprague at zandersprague.com. But one more thing, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure.
So I want to say Monday, I got an email from payroll, and I screwed up my timesheet.
Oh.
Yeah. I was 2 hours short. Long story, but I felt bad. I felt stupid. like I'd made a really bad mistake. So I was like, okay, that's okay. You just charge me PTO. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. I have no idea what I did, right? But I felt bad. I felt bad for like 2 or 3 days.
Why?
I know. I know.
I mean, the only person you really hurt was yourself.
I know. And I've got all
didn't
this
hurt the
extra
company.
PTO that I'm not using anyway because nobody can go anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't matter. It's 2 hours. I just wanted to bring that up because it happens. You know, I don't know why, but I think we are, I don't know if it's like genes, genetic, or if it's conditioning, but we all do have that sort of like negativity bias that we all have to work against every day
Absolutely.
you know, and I don't want to get, again, I'm a anti-Pollyannaist, right? Don't be just in denial and like, la, 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 everything's great. You have to face the grim, ugly truth and then move on.
Right.
Yes.
But again, acknowledge that this isn't going right, that right now is, you know, not good, but also look around at all of the stuff that actually is going right. Look, you and I woke up this morning. Hey, let's go back to Admiral Stockdale. Stay alive.
Right.
Hey, we got that right.
We got the win.
Exactly. So far,
everything's gravy after you wake up in a nice cozy bed, right?
Exactly.
Amen. Hey, this has been a blast. I appreciate you hanging out with me for a little over an hour. It was a lot of fun. So Thank you. How people can best get in touch with Zander Sprague.
Well, you know, if you Google me, you'll find me all over the place. ZanderSprague.com. That's Zander with a Z.
Yep.
So ZANDER and then SPRAGUE.com.
Got it.
You can find me on Instagram, epic_begins.
Ooh, I like it.
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on your podcast.
Well, that's really all you need.
Exactly.
Zander, this has been a blast. All right. Thank you so much. And you have an awesome day.
You bet. You too.
All right.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.